This episode of We Are Libertarians is brought to you by Audible.com. Enjoy one free audiobook courtesy of We Are Libertarians. Choose from more than 100,000 audiobook titles, including works by Ron Paul, Walter Block, Murray Rothbard, and the Cato Institute. Audible.com also has audio of radio and TV programs and audio versions of magazines and newspapers. You can get the Audible app on any mobile device or download the audio to your computer. Go to audibletrial.com/WAL or head to WeareLibertarians.com and find the link to get one free month of Audible today.
Sure to get down, grab your keyboard. Got a website you must see now. For libertarian viewpoints, this is your joint. Turn the Fox News down. Commentary is a forte, each and every day. True play away. I can't get it out of my mind. I think about the podcast all the time. A national to the state news. Trust these dudes, it's really, really cool. Spangle, Harrington, and Gold, it's not their fault. Government be acting like some fool. Greg Lenz and Joe Ruiz got some entertaining things for you to read. Oh, baby, it's a perfect 10. If you wanna get in, better read now so you can win. Oh, we are libertarians. No diggity. You gotta look it up. Oh, we are libertarians. No diggity. You gotta look it up. Oh, we are libertarians. No diggity. You gotta look it up. Oh, we are libertarians. No diggity. You gotta look it up.
Welcome to We Are Libertarians for this week. I am your host, Chris Spangle. With us, as always, is Creighton Harrington.
Hello.
And Greg Lenz.
Hello, everybody.
And a special treat for everyone, Joe Ruiz is joining us over Google Hangout. How are you doing, Joe?
Thanks for having me on the show, finally.
Yeah, Joe is our managing editor on our site at WeareLibertarians.com.
Which I understand is going to get a nice face or a nice look upgrade.
Yes, we're discussing an upgrade to make it look less bloggy and more newsy. Those are
Getting
technical.
Getting it the Feinstein treatment.
Yeah, those are the technical terms. I went to journalism class and learned bloggy and newsy. Greg
I think is a Disney movie.
Greg is probably going to laugh at everything today because he's been at Hooters for roughly 8 hours.
True. It is St. Patrick's Day.
Tomorrow is.
Well, tomorrow is. But we're celebrating today.
It's Saturday, though.
Why not start now?
There was
a Saturday before.
I started last night, and their bar crawl went to this morning. All these people were like, "Oh, we're going to do a 5K." I was like, "Oh, all the bars are open." But I'm fine, really.
Right. So he's been giggling all day, and we've been laughing at Creighton because Creighton walked in dressed like Mitt Romney today in his Oxford shirt and his jeans and his Republican shoes. And Lenz pointed it out, and I said, "Oh, get the camera." So we'll take a photo, and we'll put that up on the Facebook page. So it is. He's wearing his fresh Mitt Romney look. You were actually in D.C. this past weekend. What were you up to?
Freedom Works had they called it a youth summit. It was basically just a bunch of college folks like myself, and we basically just talked about stuff.
All right, so you were out hanging out with Freedom Works, and what are some observations that you had when you were at this leadership training summit?
They totally surprised me. I've always had the perspective that they were kind of establishment-y.
Freedom Works?
Yeah. So, I had this going in there. I was like, yeah, I'll go to this thing. I mean, I'm sure I knew that I was probably... The link was probably forwarded to me from people within YAL, so I was like, yeah, I'll give them the benefit of the doubt. And I got there, and they are very libertarian.
I told you.
I walked into their office, and they've got Ron Paul poster, Ayn Rand poster, and then a Star Wars poster. And I was like,
wow.
And then I go around the corner, and there's an Indiana Jones poster. Like, this is it. This is the greatest office ever. This is the greatest office on planet right here.
Former volunteer coordinator for the National Libertarian Party, Judge Napolitano, producer Austin Peterson, works for Freedom Works. Not Libertarian Girl, Token Libertarian Girl, Julie Borkowski works for Freedom Works.
She just won Blogger of the Year.
Blogger of the Year at CPAC. Mm-hmm. So they have a lot of libertarian staff. Where I would say it diverges is when they put money into people like Richard Murdoch, and who aren't necessarily libertarian.
Todd Aiken in Missouri, they got behind him.
Joe, tell us a little bit about yourself and who you are.
I'm Joe.
and he's an alcoholic.
That would be the man sitting in front of you.
Yeah.
I might imagine.
Thanks, Joe.
Yeah, no, I am currently working as an advertising executive for 95.3 MNC, which is a conservative news talk radio station in Michiana.
So call me. I'm trying to get the steak knives.
And in addition, I ran for U.S. Congress last year on the Libertarian Party ticket, and I'm the managing editor at We Are Libertarians.
Hold on, Joe. That's all great. I'm taking a picture of Greg for the Twitter of him holding up his beer. So check that out at We Are the letter. We Are Libertarians.
We are the
You
Libertarians.
can edit this out maybe, but this can't wait till the end of the podcast.
You guys realize it's the first 5 minutes of the show and you've Ruized me?
Joe, we are so sorry we raised you. We are so sorry. I feel so bad for Joe because Joe does all these creative things. He's
Not now.
Oh my God! If you could see what Creighton and Chris are doing
It's
right
going
now,
to be a long podcast.
they just had a McCain Graham moment right there.
Yeah, we have, as we usually mention, there is a long-running thread that takes place throughout the week as we developed it for show prep so we could share ideas for the show, and then it devolved into making fun of Galt. And
How'd that work out?
look how well that worked out. And then now it's sort of devolved into making fun of, well, Joe and Creighton.
we don't make fun
No,
of him.
we don't make fun of anybody.
Joe feels ignored because he will do something very creative, put himself out there, and then all of us are just like, nah.
Hey, did you? Usually, it's Creighton is the guilty one of
Yeah.
Ruizing someone.
Yes.
because Joe will pour his heart out, or have this deep thought and this deep question, or he'll create this great thing, and he'll want us to listen to it right away. And then, like, Creighton will be like, "So, anyways, I was hanging out with Austin Peterson, and
It's hit or miss. Some are good, some are bad. It's just the way it works.
I thought it was kinda
They're all
funny.
good. They're all good.
We all responded with glowing praise for our new theme song. So
Yes.
except for
Our
that
new
one
word or
guy,
something.
except for that one guy on iTunes, he doesn't
Yes.
like your song at all."
we're calling you out, buddy.
But
We're
thanks-
keeping the song.
He liked everything else in the show, so we can't be mean to him. And that reminds me, please go rate us on iTunes. Give us 5 stars if you like the show. 4
If you don't
hate
like
it.
the show, don't rate us.
Keep your
No,
mouth
4
shut.
star.
Just 4 stars, Creighton. So we appreciate that because that helps us out. Let's get on with the topics this week. First, we're going to talk about the budget.
Yes.
Look, it's Kirby.
If I could get your attention for 5 minutes over here, Creighton. Creighton's over here watching YouTube videos, apparently.
Look, no, it's Kirby.
As soon as we start talking about libertarian stuff, he turns his head.
Oh,
he must be
man.
becoming a Republican.
I think he's going to rename himself Tag.
You know
He
what?
totally could pass for
Yeah,
Romney,
he could
though.
totally pass for a Romney.
He's got that
Why?
that young, rugged, good-looking American boy.
Yeah.
You can't
type
wear
thing.
a collared shirt and jeans without being Romney.
Not with those shoes.
Yeah, that's true.
Oh, man.
Full disclosure, after the podcast, I'm going to buy a suit, and I figured it'd be nice to try it on with things you actually wear underneath a suit rather than a T-shirt.
Make sure you document every opinion that Creighton gives in this podcast because it will be different next week.
That's not true at all.
And he wouldn't be going there if the, what is it called, Graham Mart wasn't having a sale on very tight-fitting suits.
Graham
Whatever.
Mart. All right, so fill us in on what's going on with the competing budgets this week, Greg Lenz.
All right, Patty Murray for the Democrats released their budget in response to Paul Ryan and his budget. Paul Ryan's budget was a slight, really, essentially just an evolution of his first budget that came
10
out.
years, though.
Yeah, and it is a 10-year deal in order to get the deficit wiped out. But he just completely punted on a whole host of issues. Like it's very hard to take that kind of budget seriously because one, his initial idea 2 years ago when he was VP and was trying to get in that position was
Vice presidential candidate.
was 25% top tax rate and then a 10% bottom tax rate, just 2. But he did away with that idea in this budget proposal, and he left it up to the Ways and Means Committee because they're ultimately the ones who decide it. And then he also proposed a discretionary spending cap without proposing a single idea on how we would go about implementing that cap. And then Patty Murray came out, and the Democrat budget is the first one in, I believe, in 4 years, maybe 5. And that budget,
it's 4.
Is it 4 years?
I think so.
That budget proposes over 10 years, $975 billion in tax increases and then matched 1-to-1 with spending cuts, $975 billion in spending cuts. So essentially $100 billion a year in spending cuts, which would never, ever, ever, ever happen. And in her defense, she got killed by the left. Patty Murray got destroyed by the left for saying she took too fine of scalpel to the budget. Because among the intelligentsia of American politics, there's this idea that you can spend your way to prosperity.
Right.
And if that was
Really?
true, there is. Greece,
We haven't heard of that.
we don't need to worry about Greece. Like, they're just one of those outliers.
Right.
They don't have their own currency. It's not a big deal.
It's not happening in
It's
Spain and
It's
Portugal.
Yeah,
It's Keynesian.
It's completely Keynesian, and then what they point to though is they point to Britain. Britain cut their budget. They had slower GDP growth, and so they say, "Oh, right there, look at those UK people. If Cameron wasn't such a moron, he would know that Paul Krugman essentially is our overlord, and he knows all." And it's disappointing for everyone
And
involved.
the thing is, what's funny is the reason that happens is because every single dollar spent on services by the government goes into the GDP, but only final services for private spending. But which that's an academic point. But the thing is with when you say government spending increases GDP, when you calculate the GDP by saying government spending adds to GDP, what you're essentially saying, a great analogy is what you're saying is you'd go to a pool and you take a bucket of water and put it out one end of the pool and pour it into the other end and say that increased the level of the pool.
Yeah.
That's what they're saying when you say government spending increases GDP, because you're just taking tax dollars and then spending it again. And they're saying that is – so the way the GDP is calculated makes it very hard to cut spending, because every academic person is going to say, oh, my God, the GDP went down because we cut spending. Well, duh. It's how you calculate it makes it happen no matter what. You could cut private spending, and it might not necessarily make GDP go down. But you cut any government spending, and it's going to.
What you have to fight against is, especially in the academic world, is there have been so many studies done that essentially call it the Keynesian multiplier, that you can spend $1 and get a minimum of $1.3 back in economic activity. But Barack Obama's original appointment to his Council of Economic Advisors was Christina Romer. And her academic career was doing very well, but then she published a paper about the actual effect of the Keynesian multiplier, and her findings were that it only came out to 0.65%. So you end up spending $1 and you only get 0.65% of economic activity back. So it's not even 1 for 1. It just makes no sense at all. And that's why he had to hide that during the stimulus push in 2008.
And if we're going to stay on academic points for a minute, the dumb thing about it is that those dollars would have been spent anyway.
Yep.
We're talking about a world where, for some reason, if you don't have everybody working every hour of the day, then economic law gets turned on its head, which is essentially what Keynesians believe. So that if they're not in full employment, then we're in the twilight zone. And
free lunches are for everyone, and everyone
stuff doesn't
gets them.
work right unless we're not in full employment, which is a different topic and totally wrong. But they're saying that every dollar spent by government increases economic activity. Those dollars came from people that would have spent them anyway.
It's the broken window fallacy from Bastiat, as he outlines it. And there's a great YouTube video if you go out and search for the broken window fallacy. It's like a blue video, and check it out. People walk by and this little hooligan throws a brick through a window and of this bakery, and everybody walks by and goes, look at that little hooligan. He did such a good thing by breaking that window. He created economic growth, because now a glass man will get money because of this broken window. And the baker comes out and says, you're all fools. I would have bought a new suit with that money. And so I would have had a window and a new suit. Now I just have a broken window.
And the tailor could have provided food for his family.
Yeah,
right on down the
it goes
line.
on and on.
And the thing is if you take that to its logical extension, I mean, we could just destroy everything, and we'd have a great amount of economic activity.
That argument is being made. Paul Krugman, no joke, 6 months ago said if we had a war against space aliens, we'd be out of our depression. And I looked at him and I was like,
argument that why the World War II pulled us out of the Great Depression, because it didn't.
no.
That's our argument, is that you don't create wealth by destroying it. It's just, it's physics.
Someone on I made a comment about how war destroys free markets and empowers the government. If you go to the Libertarian, it's look it up. It's a UK magazine. You can find it on our wall too. And I became a columnist for the Libertarian, and I wrote about libertarian principles and how war destroys economic growth. Well, someone commented, that's just the stupidest thing I have ever heard in my life. You know how much the war stimulates the economy? Because look at World War II. All these women went back to work, started producing goods. It put them to work. And I just wrote back, like, are you serious? And I posted a picture of the Blitzkrieg and these poor little kids. I'm like, look how rich these kids are with the rubble of their home behind them.
The reason people think that, though, is because the stats used say that.
Yep.
Right.
But the thing is that World War II was not a time of prosperity. World War II, everybody was working during World War II because anyone who wasn't working was overseas fighting people. It's like everybody was employed because they were drafted, and if they weren't drafted, they were working in the spots that those other people were already working in.
That's where the idea of like bringing soldiers back and re-entry into society came back, because the FDR was so scared about when they brought them back that unemployment would shoot up 20%.
Every mainstream academic back then was just like, oh my God, we have to find public works programs for these people, and what ended up happening is they slashed the budget, they slashed taxes after World War II. That's what finally got us out of the Depression.
Yep.
We got out of the Depression because after World War II they slashed everything, and then for some reason stuff. I mean, if we're gonna talk about this for a second, if you want to know the greatest counterexample to the World War II argument, even the whole New Deal argument, as far as what got us out of the Depression, just look at 1920. 1920, there was a recession
Under Harding.
Under Harding, that had every economic indicator, unemployment level, GDP, investment, cap, all of it. Every indicator was worse than the 29 Depression, which was the Great Depression. Every initial economic indicator was bad, was worse than the Depression, and Harding didn't do anything. Nope. He even had a speech where he said, we need to not do anything, and it was over in 21, and then you had the Roaring 20s. So, I mean, there are counter examples, but the reason that this stuff gains so much weight in academic circles is because the stats used to calculate economic health are biased. I mean, they really are biased. The GDP's one, but I mean, if you gauge the health of an economy on whether or not unemployment level's high or not, I mean, yeah, the war looks great because everybody who's not drafted doesn't count because they're in the military, and then everybody that's drafted doesn't count in unemployment numbers, and anybody who's not drafted is making bombs. But I mean, that was a time where there was rationing. People had, there was no paper. I mean, it was not a very good time for people, as far as standard of living. But those are considered good economic times because of the statistics are biased in their favor.
Something we do need to mention too is it's so easy to fall prey to Paul Ryan and say, you know what, Paul Ryan gets me. Like I understand where he wants to take us, but if you're not going to be serious and offer like real solutions to what you want to do in the budget, and just instead of coming out and saying, you know what, guys, he did say, I want to repeal Obama. He thinks that Obamacare isn't going to happen, and then he wants to turn Medicaid into a what is it called? Block grant? Is that right? Yeah. And then
it would go to the states.
Yeah, and then he essentially assumes that discretionary spending becomes less than 2% of our economy in the budget going forward, which Democrats would cry foul over if that ever happened going forward.
So when he says he's in favor of repealing Obamacare, that means not funding it.
Yeah. Exactly.
Right.
And you know what? I will say, I don't necessarily think that he ever expected this to pass, but I will at least give him credit on the fact that he at least introduced it, knowing it wouldn't pass, but just being like, the winds are blowing in such a way that he can do this and not, destroy his career. He could introduce something that literally is this drastic as far as Obamacare is concerned, and it won't destroy his career. I'll give him credit on that. I mean, everything else he's not very good on, but at least he had the cojones to do that.
But if you are the chairman of the House Budget Committee, you should give specifics. Like if you're not in his position, I can totally understand. But
so when you say that it's not a serious budget, is it because it goes too far past what the political climate will actually endorse, or is it that it's not specific and it's basically talking points?
It's because it's talking points and not comprehensive. I think Rand Paul's going to deliver his budget on Tuesday.
Another
correct?
one,
and he's going to
5 years.
Yep.
This is his second or third where he's got it. It balances in 5 years, and that's something that I think a lot of people that listen to the podcast can respect, because Ron Paul himself said that the only budget that matters is this year's budget. I mean, we can't ensure things 10 years down the road. So if it's not going to get done in the tenure of a person who's putting it forward, then it's not legitimate. It's not serious because there's no way to enforce it. There's no way to make sure it happens. His happens in 5 years, and and he cuts the Department of Education. He's gonna. It's good stuff.
He takes on some very unpopular positions in his budget. That's one thing I'm concerned about.
The Department of Education.
Education. I think he's going to cut I would guarantee he's going to cut the FBI and CIA budget going forward, and that's going to be an issue. Even though he's kind of railed against America's role in society as the world's police, I think that's going to be one that's going to be questioned and hit hard.
Right.
His dad got killed by that. He was on the show The Firing Line. Have you watched that much?
I haven't. What is it?
It was a show by William F. Buckley back in the 80s under the rise of Reagan conservatism. And what killed Rand Paul with Republicans, there was actually a defining moment on the show. Ron Paul was talking to William F. Buckley, and they talked about the idea of, well, what if you were kidnapped, Ron? And it sounds hilarious, but he goes, Ron, in the Confederacy era, there would have been 50 states. They all would have had different extradition and policies between states. There would have been no central government to collaborate on bringing you back and finding you. Do you think it would have been more efficient or less efficient than our current system? And Ron Paul was like, he kind of stuttered, and that was the point that the Libertarian Party and Ron Paul almost was ostracized from Buckley and mainstream conservatism.
Yeah, for those that don't know, Ron Paul actually ran on the Libertarian Party ticket for president in 1988. It's funny you bring that up, Greg, because we invited Greg onto the podcast because we figured we needed more, of a mainstream Republican point of view, and we've ruined you. Like, you're quoting Ron Paul on Buckley from 86. It's like, your scumbag lens goes on a podcast to be the token Republican, and who knew 3 months later that'd be Creighton.
For all my Reddit haters, if anyone I doubt is listening to me because they hate me, they say I list myself as a Libertarian Republican, and I absolutely support the principles of the Libertarian Party. But I, like everyone else on this podcast, want to see I want to see a reduction in liberty in any means possible.
Right.
So when I come out and say I can see the benefit of a Republican policy, it's not because I'm not a libertarian. It's because I think it's politically feasible.
Right. And it's just, you wrote a piece basically supporting libertarian principles in the party this week, and I just thought that was hilarious. He's swallowed the biggest red pill he could find.
I did.
Let's get Joe Ruiz in here. Joe, what are your thoughts on the budget? Does it scare you that a budget, not that it's not specific, but that it's being called extreme and deadly and massive austerity for America, and it's not that drastic compared to what most libertarians would think is needed?
Are you talking about Rand's budget?
Paul Ryan's budget. And the budgets that are being proposed that are on the table now, even Rand Paul's, I'd say 75% of libertarians probably would say won't end up going far enough, but baby steps, people.
So are you calling Paul Ryan's budget baby steps?
Very, very tiny, like fetus steps.
I guess I would be one of those libertarians that's more excited to see a Rand Paul budget, because I don't think baby tiny fetus steps are going to be sufficient going forward. And I was actually going to ask, if there's more talking points, why is a person in Paul Ryan's position presenting such a budget? Is it political strategy? Because I think if it's something where it's just to appeal to some sort of voter base, then that needs to be exposed. And if we're looking at a timeline, or like with Ron Paul saying that we can only count on this year's budget, if that's the only one that we can really take a look at and know that we're going to have some serious effect, then why are we even humoring something like what Paul Ryan is presenting or anyone else?
Joe, I think that the reason Paul Ryan's doing this is Paul Ryan is kind of for a long time was the darling of the left. He was a guy considered by the left a very serious politician who, even though he didn't believe as Democrats, was intent on fixing it, even if it wasn't ideologically in line. And Paul Ryan sees the train leaving the station, in my opinion. I think he saw Rand Paul's moment, and that was the powder keg that kicked off the lead. Right now, in all polling, Rand Paul's going to be the main guy. Marco Rubio is going to be the number 2, and Paul Ryan is kind of that guy that's falling back and no one's talking about. So I think that was the reason he tried to preempt Rand Paul's budget.
I see it differently. I think Paul Ryan is very serious about the Republican Party presenting serious ideas. And it's just like a joke that I think I said on last week's podcast, that the Republican Party ideology, especially led by people like Palin, it gets reduced to bumper stickers. It's no blood. It's just sort of 999. That's just one small example. And maybe there's some serious policy there, but it's not. You really can't tell anything other than that. And I think Paul Ryan, that irks him a little bit, and I think he wants the Republicans to be seen as serious and wants to be a leader in that. He wants to present ideas and start a conversation and show that Republicans are as serious as ideas as the Democrats are. And
because they're so serious.
Because they're very serious. They have a lot of plans, and all of them include more war, more government.
But I understand that 100%, but that's like saying that I'm so serious about losing weight, but I'm not going to commit to a calorie restriction on a daily basis.
Shot?
No, not you.
That was a shot?
Dude, me?
You're in my house, and you come in here and take a shot?
Come on. No, me? I'm just saying, that. In my opinion, that's what it comes down to. Like, we need to reduce the budget, but I'm not even going to come close to telling you what the tax rates need to be.
And I think that's why it's a tactical error, and I wonder if maybe he sped up his plans to, try and steal the conversation away from Rand Paul a little bit, because it sounds like the budget was not as serious as what you'd expect from Paul Ryan.
No. And really the first one isn't because, maybe it is. Like, you can say discretionary spending is going to be capped, period. It's going to be 2% of GDP going forward. But no Democrat is ever going to let you say, why do you want kids that are in a bad urban position not to get Head Start and get a chance to better their lives? It puts you in an untenable position going forward.
All right, well, I guess I just don't understand the strategy on Paul Ryan's part, to get back to the serious stuff, because this is a guy that back on the campaign, I know, right? Back on the campaign trail,
Joe, you just totally Ruiz Creighton.
You can't fly, Creighton. You can't fly.
Don't crush my dreams, man.
Thank you, Greg. But back on the campaign trail with Mitt Romney, he was trying to appeal to some sort of free marketeer group by saying that he read Ayn Rand and that he was an Atlas Shrugged guy.
Oh, he was trying to appeal to libertarians for sure.
You think so?
Oh, absolutely. That's the only reason he would have brought that up.
But then look at him. He's doing nothing that's authentic. So if he's seeing the train leaving the station and he wants to preempt Rand Paul, don't you think he would be a little bit more aggressive in his approach rather than, I don't know if I can say pussyfooting around with his budget numbers? Is that a bad word?
He's got cats, so it's okay.
Man.
See, I just thought it was insincere. I thought he was preying on the low information voter. The low information voter looks at Patty Murray in the Democrat budget and says, oh my gosh, those guys project a $1.6 trillion budget essentially forever.
The low information voter doesn't even know who Patty Murray is.
But I mean, they see the Democrat budget and they say, oh my gosh, they project deficits forever. Who's this guy that proposed balanced budgets in 10 years?
Right.
Even though it's not serious, like, oh, that Paul Ryan guy, he's my guy.
You know what? I think, to answer Joe's question, why didn't he try and one-up Rand Paul? I think because he doesn't believe that we should do that. I don't think he understands how dire the situation is. I think he's not doing it. Let's give him credit. He bumped it up from 30-something years to 10 years. His first one was 30-something years at balance.
2050 was when it balanced.
Yeah, so now it's 10 years away. I don't think he does it so seriously because I don't think he understands it is that serious. I think he's trying to play, this is passable versus this is making a statement, and I don't know. Honestly, I don't know. I think Paul Ryan is kind of just I think he is forced to the front. I feel like he does. I think people want him to be this charismatic guy, and he's kind of willing to take it, but at the same time, I feel like it's just kind of forced.
Do you feel like the Republican bench is just shallow, and that's why he's forced to the front?
Maybe. I don't know.
I do.
To an extent, I think that Mitt Romney picked him because he was trying to get the ladies. I think. I swear to God, I think
because he looks like Matthew Morrison from
because
Glee.
he's young. He's a young guy. He's got all. I think he was like trying to get the ladies. Kind of. That was why he picked. One of the reasons that Mitt Romney picked him. He's a budget slasher, I guess you could say. He's a budget guy, but.
I want you ladies, but keep that embryo in your uterus.
Yeah, I don't think Mitt Romney. I wouldn't put it past Mitt Romney.
Joe, you probably better understand this idea.
You're a lady.
Well, no.
Listen.
But you ran for Congress, so you would understand that if I'm running against you and I say, well, I've got this plan and I can cut the budget to no deficit in 10 years and we'll start paying down the national debt and the United States will be debt free. What are you going to say?
How?
Traditional politics, like even though you wouldn't have any backing for this, would say, well, I've got this budget plan that's going to cut the deficit in 8 years, and my plan's better than his. It's going to create competition.
So are you over here hating on me for watching videos and you're looking at ballerinas or something?
No, there? I'm looking for something in our chat room. Don't. I'm not making noise. Go ahead. Sorry. Go ahead.
But
Did you show Creighton the picture of Mitt Romney?
Yeah, I
saying,
saw it.
Creighton, hello, son.
I'm not Mitt Romney just because
I think we should. I think on the show he should be Creighton tag Harrington III. That is just so waspy.
I was gonna call
so perfect.
I was gonna call him Flip.
I'm a junior.
Flip Romney.
I'm a junior.
Creighton Romney is a Romney name. I mean, really.
So like we talked about this week when Spangle goes, yeah, there's this guy named Creighton Harrington. I was like, oh, if his sweater is tied around his neck when he walks in, I'm not speaking to him.
Do you get a lot of that, Creighton?
No, really, I don't.
It's a great name.
Seriously?
Honestly,
Usually what I get is, oh, that's different.
You know what we've gotten a lot in private messages is, right, a podcast, a libertarian podcast with a guy named Spangle and Galt. Right, what's your real names?
Yeah.
It's like, no, that's legitimately our names.
Our names are Fluoride and Birthers.
Stop it.
Oh, God.
You stop it now.
Cut that out.
No trolling. This whole section will probably get cut out. So you're asking Joe an intelligent question.
No, I think Joe's a politician, so Joe's run, and you try to preempt.
I'm not a politician.
Yeah,
I
what a
ran for
scumbag.
office. I'm not a politician.
Don't you?
You ran for
Don't
office.
you say that?
But Joe, you may run again in the future, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and
I may. I'm not confirming that right now.
And as the libertarian brand grows, and as it is, and whatever ends up ultimately happening to it, you might be in a great position to win that district. And if your Democratic opponent comes out and says, well, this guy isn't serious, he's got a budget plan that only balances it in 10 years, your instinct's going to be, I can do it in 5.
Right. Yeah, so let's...
Yeah.
Any final thoughts on this topic before we move on?
Nothing's going to happen.
Yeah. We're nihilists.
There will be another.
Nothing will happen. And
the House might
pass
something. The House might pass something, but the Senate won't pass anything again.
CPAC is taking place this week, and you know what? There's just not as much buzz as there used to be. Is CPAC a big deal in the conservative movement and the Republican Party anymore? Let's start with our old token Republican, Greg Lenz.
I think CPAC is still a big deal. I think that the Republican Party is a smaller deal than it used to be. So, but in the circles of the Republican Party, CPAC is their big coming out party. It's where they get to trot Marco Rubio out there and tell them how much they love the Hispanic Americans and how he's the great American story of success from Republican values. But this particular CPAC was a colossal failure on a lot of fronts. Rand Paul preempted the message.
Oh my God!
Marco Rubio
Don't talk about that yet.
No. But
talk about like the banning Go Proud stuff first, because we're going to talk about the Rand Paul part.
No, we're not going to talk about Rand Paul. We're going to talk about what this is their last stand. This is the old guard Republicans' last stand. That's what the CPAC was to me. They tried to control the message. They tried to control everything about it. They wanted to trot out Rubio. They wanted to they brought in Donald Trump, which essentially, in my opinion, as a former Republican, marginalized them completely.
Wait a minute,
absolutely.
Former Republican? Listen to you. We got you.
Oh, I had an epic week.
I got that on tape.
I went from Republican this week on Monday to pouring myself into libertarianism, and I flirted with a minarchist, then I watched some firing lines, and I came back to libertarian Republican. It was like riding the vortex at Kings Island.
I went from minarchist to full-blown, like, anarchist, but not like an ANCAP, but like a Joker.
I would just love to expose you, but I'm not going to do it because of your credibility in the community. But
I had a week, too, that shook my foundations a little bit, but for another podcast. I think when it comes to CPAC, when you are inviting Donald Trump to be your keynote speaker and you are not inviting Chris Christie to CPAC, you are not a serious organization anymore.
No longer.
And, Chris Christie is more progressive than, a Rand Paul or even a Marco Rubio. And he is rightly or wrongly blamed for the loss of Mitt Romney for what happened in Sandy. But I think Chris Christie appeals to a lot of moderate Republicans, a lot of independents, because he says it like it is. He says what he thinks, and that doesn't always jive with a political structure. Outspokenness is not always a positive quality in a political organization. Donald Trump and not Chris Christie, I think that's kind of ridiculous.
I feel like they asked a bunch of good people if they wanted to keynote, and then they all said no, and then they're like, well, dude, all we got left is Donald Trump.
Yeah, he's going to go up there, he's going to talk about being a birther. Like, what do you think?
I know. I mean, I don't know.
Was there something official? Like, did they invite Chris Christie and he couldn't make room in his schedule, or just wasn't invited?
The media has taken CPAC, and the storyline out of CPAC is now, who didn't they invite? And so the media
I don't think that's the main storyline.
No, but that's the leading up to it. That's like the hot topic that, Sizzla at The Fix and Washington Post and all those guys, they go, all right, well, who didn't they invite? And they went to CPAC and they said, are you purposely not inviting Chris Christie? And there were a couple others. I think Bob McDonald from Virginia was one of them. And they said, yeah, they're not invited. We're not inviting them to speak. And, I don't know.
Because that's what reaches out to people is uninviting them.
Yeah. Right. I listen to a lot of other radio shows and podcasts, and people who are true independents. I would put like a Howard Stern or my other favorite podcast, other than this one and my Creating Maya stuff, the Mike O'Meara show. They're all leaning Democrat, but they're independents, and they like Chris Christie. They say, if the Republican Party would put up Chris Christie, we'd vote for him over Obama. And then the conservative, CPAC, which is like the event of the year for grassroots conservatives, refuses to invite Chris Christie. I think that's a huge warning sign for the conservative movement and moderates.
Why though? Because
they
won't invite a middle of the road guy.
I think there's two ways to look at it. I think you have to look at what is, if you're a Republican, and most Republicans, I would argue, don't have a set philosophy like we libertarians do. We have a very definite set of principles that we subscribe to. When you're a Republican, you just you say, all right, well, I'm for less government, and maybe you're a social conservative. It becomes a little more murky. And really, if you're a Republican, if you're still one of the few people left, one of the tens of people who is a proud Republican and doesn't say, I'm not a Republican, I'm a conservative, then I think you are more worried about winning elections. And if you want to win elections as a Republican, I think they need to be more moderate, or they need to go more libertarian.
Yeah, I disagree on the moderate part. I think if they want to win elections, then they need to go more towards the young.
You'll never win as
the young are moderate or libertarian.
They're more libertarian.
Here's how I would describe it. Moderate if they're a low information voter and don't pay attention. Libertarian if they pay attention and read the news and actually form a political opinion. Does that make sense?
I think that nails what the heart of it is. But the Republican Party has been in power so long, and I wrote about this week, is they will not abandon what got them to their current state. They refuse.
Right. No, I think some of them. I think
Creighton, how entertained are you right now?
Right, Creighton, broadcaster of the year.
I think some of them refused, and I think that they're. I mean, honestly, everybody knows that the Republican Party is battling over its soul right now. I mean, there are factions within the Republican Party trying to dictate the direction that it goes. And I think the main story coming out of CPAC is not going to be Donald Trump. I mean, that will be a story that they refuse to invite. They put him as the keynote, and he's kind of a joke. But I think the main story coming out of it is going to be the rise of young Republicans that are, libertarian. I mean, that was the main story that came out of stuff like when Ron Paul was there. I mean, everybody talked about how young people took the place over and they were libertarian leaning. And then
we've got CPAC on in the background, and ironically, at the moment that Creighton said that, they showed a picture of the crowd while Ann Coulter is speaking, and it was 78-year-old women.
Yeah, but they
daughters of the American Revolution.
But I mean, all the various news sources have been talking about how a lot of young people are at CPAC again this year. I think last year it wasn't super hot. I think it was like kind of bleh last year. But this year, it's been a lot of young people. I think a lot of it is because they wanted Rand Paul to win the straw poll. And they wanted to stand with Rand. I mean, his speech was great. Did you guys did you listen to his speech?
Yeah,
let's finish up with the soul of the Republican Party discussion.
But that's what I'm saying is, I think the big story coming out of this is going to be how all of these Rand Paul kids, how all of these kids who are conservative libertarian people came. And they're the next generation, and then you have all of these the John McCains and stuff are getting called out by everybody. I think the main story coming out of this is going to be how young people, or how libertarian ideas, libertarian-leaning Republicans, conservatives, are actually making more of an effect than they had previously, because everyone at CPAC was calling out people like John McCain.
Yeah.
I mean, everybody. That doesn't happen. I mean, that was your presidential choice back in 2008, and now he's getting called out. What a difference this many years makes. But I mean, he's getting called out by everybody now, and that's a pretty big difference. And I think that when somebody like Marco Rubio goes up and gives a speech, that he is the establishment conservative guy. He's the one that they're trying to push to be like in a palatable shell. Yeah, he's like the he's the establishment guy. He's the guy that's been vetted and everybody likes. He's been vetted on war issues and on social conservative issues, and he's the guy that all the power players are trying to push. He's the conservative, but the power players are behind him. Whereas Rand Paul's the conservative. He's a libertarian leaning guy, and he's not. He's just kind of just been essentially almost a rogue to an extent. And he just went up and he stole Rubio's moment. He took it. I mean, everybody talks about how Rand Paul just stole Rubio's moment. And I think that's kind of stuff's happening. It's like the story's going to be how these libertarian-leaning young people are just basically taking the Republican Party away from the establishment folks, and it's been on full display for everyone to see here. I mean, it is just the icing on the cake for the filibuster.
I think, and I will say it again for anybody listening, and for my young friend Creighton over here, I listen to. I don't want libertarian-leaning young people. I want libertarian young people, and I think we have to draw a line in the sand and say we're going to be libertarians if we're going to be in the GOP, because if you don't, then you start to drift. And what happens, I look at Ted Cruz, okay, and there was the moment that he had with Dianne Feinstein, and I'll pull it up and we'll play it later. I want to have such a raging Rand boner for Ted Cruz, okay? And for those of you who don't follow the Facebook or Twitter, a Rand boner is incredible excitement over a politician with fervor that is usually reserved for a sports team or for
Google fanboys,
or Apple. Think Justin Bieber girls.
Who worded that definition, by the way? That's fantastic.
That was me. I'm a wordsmith,
nice.
Joe Ruiz.
Very good, very good.
It will be submitted to the Urban Dictionary tomorrow, actually. So I look at Ted Cruz and Mike Lee, and I don't necessarily feel this way about Rand Paul, because I think he's going to be consistent for a long time, just like his dad. And I think he'll get more and more libertarian the older he gets and the crankier he gets, just like his dad. I really want to see there's a lot of good vibes going on right now, but we have a Democratic president, and we have a media cycle that favors the Democrats right now, and it'll probably always be that way. I want to see what Mike Lee and Ted Cruz and Marco Rubio and all these guys are going to be like when there's an R next to the president's name. That is the test. And for libertarian-leaning young people, you have to be libertarians and stick to your principles, because otherwise you're going to get sucked up with the current. And, you know, I've been through both on both sides, and I want to really like Ted Cruz and Mike Lee right now.
Well,
I really do. But I'm nervous about it, and I think that's the soul of the party. The soul of the party right now is becoming more libertarian-leaning, but is it going to stay libertarian for a long time?
I think though, and this is just from my experience, most people that I mean, when I say libertarian leaning, I mean like libertarian conservatives, libertarians,
right.
You know, just the general mass of people who consider themselves to be friends of libertarians, whether or not that means they're full-fledged libertarians or they're just leaning libertarian. I think for the most part, at least the ones that I have experienced, the people that I have met, they are the same kind of person that you're describing. You know, they're like, you know, I hope that we can keep our principles as, you know, time goes on. And like, if you have enough people worried about whether or not the principles will be saved by everybody else, whether or not people will stay true to their ideals, then that right there is a good sign that people will stay true to their ideals, because everybody's afraid that, you know, the other guy isn't going to stay true to their ideals. But if everyone's thinking that, then everyone's going to stay true to their ideals and they're worried about everybody else. I mean, I think that there is a healthy amount of people that consider themselves to be libertarian or libertarian conservative or whatever you want to call it. They consider themselves, or that they are principled, and they do plan, at least now, to stay principled, and they want to stay principled, and they want to change things and actually not just get into the power, they're not there just to get another Republican president. They're there they actually have these same wishes that you do. So I don't know. Maybe I'm optimistic, but I think that people like Ted Cruz and Mike Lee, I am leaning more towards giving them the benefit of the doubt than I am just waiting for them to be a Republican, because, I mean, I maybe it's because I know people who worked with Ted Cruz, and, you know, the guy has the entire freaking Constitution memorized.
That's his backbone.
No,
That's what keeps him grounded.
Literally has the Constitution. Like, they asked him on an interview once, what's this clause of this amendment, or what's this part of Article 1, Section 8, and he just looks up and he reads some letters off, and then he just recites. He has the whole Constitution memorized. I mean, that's a guy I can respect. I mean, okay, yeah, it's really kind of superficial to an extent, but nevertheless, I mean, the guy, we could always call him out and say, you've got this thing memorized. How do you not know what it says when you're doing this? I don't know.
It goes back to trust but verify, because I think the role of the libertarian thought is going to be ultimately end up being the backbone of any future Republicans going forward. There's going to be this huge pull, and Bush fell prey to it, of compassionate conservatism. We're in power. We can't be. We're going to do the tax cut that's going to overwhelmingly put money back into the hands of people who earned it. I'm not getting into a moral argument, but at the same time, we need to do something about Medicare Part D to show that we care. Like, that is going to be the pull, and how can you resist that? And that's the role, I think, of the libertarian strand if they end up moving towards the Republican Party.
Yeah. But on the flip side, and we had this conversation about Rand Paul's presidential chances this week, he had a great philosophical leadership moment with the filibuster. But it was a philosophical leadership moment that gets people like us who are politically interested and natural supporters of Rand Paul behind him, saying, God, what a leader. What is going to grab people is that emotional leadership moment. And, you know, Bush, that's where Bush excelled. Bush was not a leader philosophically. Bush was a leader emotionally, and I showed you the picture that essentially won him the presidency in 2004, which was him hugging the young 9/11 victim, who I think she had lost her parents. And you just got that sense that Bush is going to hug you, he's going to make you feel okay, and he's going, you know. So can Rand Paul or any of these guys present that moment? That's why I think the race for president at this point, and it's March 2013 for 2016, so let's not get way ahead of ourselves. But can Rand Paul give that emotional presentation that a Chris Christie can have during a Sandy hurricane? can he give that 9/11, soon they'll hear all of us type of a leadership moment? When we look at Ron Paul, we don't see an emotional creature. We don't see someone who is going to walk up and give you a hug. You get that philosophical leader moment. And did Rand Paul get enough of emotional awareness from, was it Carol Paul? So we'll see. And I think that's his test over the next few years, is to find those moments where he's not only showing philosophical leadership, but also emotional leadership. Let's go to Joe Ruiz. Joe, your take on where the Republican Party is going and the heart and soul of the Republican Party.
Well, Ronald Reagan said that the heart and soul of the Republican Party was libertarianism, right? And maybe we're coming back around to that. And I just want to say on a side note, I'm totally in agreement with you in regards to Rand Paul needing an emotional moment. I don't think he's had it yet, but I think one will most likely present itself, if not be created. In terms of Mike Lee and what you guys were talking about with him and Ted Cruz, the good thing about those guys is at this point in, I guess, political history, they are sort of supporting actors to Rand Paul, who has a little bit bigger of a following. So I think we've still got time to keep our eyes on them, to be a little bit skeptical and to hold their feet to the fire. Because at this point, if Rand Paul is Batman, then Ted Cruz is like Robin, or Mike Lee is Nightwing. It's going to be a while before they get their own comic.
That was the best analogy I've ever heard in my life.
Me too.
Every libertarian listening goes, "Oh, that made total sense."
That was
I'll be here all week.
best analogy.
It's just like when Wolverine debuted in X-Men or in the Incredible Hulk's comic. Then he became part of X-Men.
Someone's totally going to steal that on Reddit.
You knew
and claim
that?
credit for it.
You knew that?
I only know that because of the finale of King of the Nerds on TBS.
Where did the Punisher debut?
I don't know. I don't read comics.
Spider-Man.
I'm not one of you.
I thought a lot of CPAC could be summed up in Rubio's final words, where he said,
Drop it like it's hot.
He said right before that, he goes, "America works." And I was just like, what could more signify your commitment to the Republican Party and what you believe than that line? America works. We don't need to change it. And all I could think about was, I can't wait for Rand Paul to get
Oh, my God. And you know what? Rand...
How about the Constitution works?
Exactly.
Rand-
Not America works. Let's redeem the founders' ideals.
Rand got up there, and, man, he was so good.
Hot and strong,
Whatever.
and good looking.
No, but he was so good
Just grabbed a pillow.
he was so good at framing his ideas in a way that was palatable for the CPAC audience. Like when he was talking about, not sacrificing civil liberties in the fight on terrorism, he said it. The way he said it was because if we do that, then what are our brothers and fathers? What are they, and our sons and daughters, what are they over there dying for? And, it was such a good way of presenting it to these people because it tied it in with something they already believed in so wholeheartedly. And that's what I think makes Rand Paul so much different, is that he can take something that we undoubtedly agree with. Civil liberties are an incredibly intensely important issue, and they shouldn't be sacrificed at all. But instead of just saying, this is what the founders believed, and this is what blah blah blah, he said to a CPAC audience, if we don't, have we really won if we have to sacrifice all these things? And what are they dying for? What are your sons and daughters dying for? If we it's such a good messaging moment, and I don't know. It really is telling as to how good he is at just being a speaker and talking about these issues. Because, I don't know. That just really hit me. I really caught on to that. It's like there's so many ways he could have talked about it, but he kind of used that language. And I think it was very shrewd, and I liked it.
It totally was for the high information voter, but Spangle summed it up perfectly. He needs his emotional moment, and context creates that so much. Like Bill Clinton.
That's why it's hard for congressmen and senators to get elected to the presidency, especially in the modern era, because there are so many natural leadership moments for emotional connections with voters when you're a governor.
You're telling me Chris Christie doesn't care? Look what all he did for New Jersey after Sandy.
Why do you think our current governor here in Indiana, Mike Pence, didn't go from number 3 in the House to run when he probably could have gotten the nomination in 12?
Yep.
He ran for governor. So, and you'll see polling in Iowa soon, I'm sure. Put your money on it 16 months from now. So, yeah, he doesn't connect on an emotional level right now. It doesn't mean that I don't think he's capable, but I think to get people like my family who are not, they're Republicans, they don't get the libertarian thing, they don't understand what I'm talking about. When someone asks me a question at Thanksgiving because I'm the novelty, because I know things about politics.
You're the bar trick.
Right. Then, are you talking about politics again? Oh, you're so annoying. I'm like, shut up, Jessica.
I think we actually saw this in the 90s with
Jessica
Clinton.
sounds like that.
That's my sister, yeah.
Shut up, Jessica.
She's very manly.
In the 90s with Clinton, the press just lamented that, why couldn't 9/11 have happened under Clinton? He could have been vaulted all time as one of the all-time great presidents because he did a great job in the economy. He could have led us through a difficult time.
Why could 3,000 people die?
No, but honestly, that is a lot. That was one of the sentiments of the press is Clinton won't end up going down as a great president because he didn't have that moment that defined him.
I think a lot of that has to do with because Gore lost. I mean, if you have a two-term president, if Hillary Clinton loses, Barack Obama's legacy is over. Barack Obama has a bad legacy. Reagan has such a good legacy because Bush won afterwards. Their legacy is is whether or not their next guy wins. And I think a lot of the reason that Clinton got, he doesn't have this awesome legacy is because Gore lost to Bush.
Let's do a little sidebar here.
Bush.
Ann Coulter just walked off the CPAC stage.
Straw poll results. Turn it up. We can edit this.
We took a slight break and watched the... Okay, calm down over there. Took a slight break to watch the CPAC straw poll, and through the magic of editing, you did not notice a slight difference unless you're watching on our YouTube. If you ever want to see the full, unedited, horrific version of the show, you can go to our YouTube channel. We can't edit that, but we do edit the audio down.
You probably better get in on it while you can, because once people start watching it, we'll probably stop doing it.
Right.
Because we don't want people to see this.
It gets like 5 views an episode. So we took a minute, and here are the results from the straw poll.
Ooh, it was close.
25% Rand Paul, 23% Rubio, Santorum at 8, Christie at 7, Paul Ryan at 6, Scott Walker
out of
5,
nowhere.
Ben Carson.
A private doctor got 6% of the vote. Yeah.
Yeah. Why has it got to be black, Maya? Ted Cruz with 4, Jindal at 3, Palin at 3, Other at 14, and Undecided at 1. Rand Paul with 25%. And Marco Rubio at 23%, and Rick Santorum at 8. So those are your top 3. Are you surprised at the following? You are surprised by the fact that Rand Paul didn't blow away Marco Rubio, or that Marco Rubio was so close to Rand Paul. Greg Lenz, go.
I'm not surprised by either. Rand Paul's people are great at organizing. He's got his dad's infrastructure already built in. Marco Rubio is going to be the overwhelming favorite of the traditional Republicans. I'm shocked by Rick Santorum, but there still are the crazy social conservatives that do show up to an extent.
Creighton Harrington.
I will say, though, I'm not surprised either, but for a different reason. I'm kind of surprised, I guess. They didn't push this like they did with when Ron Paul was running.
Yeah, because it doesn't matter. It's 2013 compared to 2012.
But they didn't push it. I mean, let's just admit it. Ron Paul, Rand Paul, people, Liberty. We like to see that kind of stuff up on the screen,
right?
But back in 2010, 2011, Campaign for Liberty gave discounted tickets to people to get out here. I mean, it was a big deal. They did a lot of stuff to help Ron Paul win.
Are you hearing that they did any organized? I mean, the last CPAC I went to was 2003.
No,
so it's totally different.
I have not heard that they've been doing the organizing to the same level that they did back in 2010, 2011.
Are any of the candidates doing organizing at CPAC?
I don't know, but the numbers showed how fewer votes there were as compared to the years past. And I think that's telling, because one of the things that people did to get their candidates, they bring people in.
Right.
This one, I will say that people like that were Rand Paul people, they probably did like a mock get out the vote, where they actually pulled people, said, "Have you voted?" And if they haven't, then take them over to the thing. So I'm sure they did that, and that might have made the difference. But the fact that he still did so well, I mean, I'm actually kind of surprised because I'm not aware that they did a massive organizing campaign to have him win the straw poll like they've done in years past for Ron.
Joe Ruiz.
Yeah, I'm actually kind of surprised that Marco Rubio was as close to Rand Paul as he was. It's not an election year. And, generally what I mean is I think more people kind of have an open mind and do a little bit of looking, or at least the people who are not looking and who are the low information voters, I think pay attention less during an election year. And so, that's just an incomplete thought. I'm surprised because looking at where the audience is at, I guess I actually expected that there would be more of a libertarian-leaning presence in that room, whether or not they organized the way that they did for Ron Paul. I just thought that the presence would naturally be there because I thought that's where the room would be at this year, and it turns out that there's still quite a few who are not.
I think that it says more about the philosophical makeup of the CPAC audience versus the campaign strength of those that are trying to astroturf it. In years past, the last couple of years, it's been an opportunity, especially for the Paul folks, to say, this is a youth movement, look how many people we got, send us money. And the other campaigns going, all right, let's just try and stem the tide of Ron Paul quote-unquote cheaters, as they like to. You talk to some of these establishment Republican kids, they're like, Ron Paul just cheated, CPAC polls are just totally irrelevant. And I think this year is, and that's what they all sound like too. Every Republican kid I've ever talked to talks just like that.
In their blue blazer.
Yeah, and their checkered shirt and their firm pressed jeans with their black shoes.
These aren't firm pressed at all. Look how wrinkly they are.
And now to Tag for his final thoughts.
Flip Romney. Are you excited?
We're sorry, Creighton, buddy. We're sorry.
Does this get you all excited? Are you popping a Rand boner over there?
I mean, I guess I'm surprised that Rubio got as much as he did. I will say though, I don't think that. I mean, people in the Liberty movement, can smell Rubio for what he is. Right. But I think the general conservative base, if they agree with Rand on all these issues, they don't necessarily see Rubio as disagreeing with him on all these issues that Rand has kind of made a name for himself on. So that might be a factor. They might have just said, I think Rubio's better because he's going to get some Hispanic vote. And then maybe they've drank that Kool-Aid more than they've, thought that, being principled is important. So that could be part of it. But either way, the fact that he won in a year where they didn't really organize, and it was just kind of like it was probably more predominantly just a typical CPAC base than it was a campaign for liberty flooding people in kind of base. The fact that he still won, I think, is telling because I mean, like I said, this wasn't pushed super hard. This was just kind of, just kind of a normal CPAC year, I guess.
Yeah. Joe, would he get your Hispanic vote?
Yes, absolutely.
Marco Rubio?
Rand Paul.
Marco Rubio?
Hey, but no, not Marco Rubio. No,
hey,
Rand Paul.
Rand Paul's from Texas.
Let me ask you a question. You know the Hispanic community better than us because you are Puerto Rican, as you like to point out. What is that a motivating factor for people? I mean, do you really think that is something that Hispanics will get excited about a Republican Marco Rubio, and that would be motivation to vote?
Well, I'm a member of the South Bend Hispanic Leadership Coalition up here in South Bend, Indiana, and they are quick to point out to me that, while I am a Puerto Rican man, I am not as in tune with the culture as what some of them are, and that has a lot to do with my upbringing and but I think that it does. Knowing them and talking to them, I think that yes, I think that it is important to them that a Latino man is potentially going to be nominated for that office, and I think that it's going to actually hold weight. So it's something that. Rand Paul, if he wants to combat that with the Latino community, he's going to have to position himself very well.
So what I learned from Joe's statement is that no matter what group he's in, he's getting his balls busted.
He's hated. You're not down for the struggle, Joe. You don't respect the South Bend Hispanics.
Poor Joe. All right, let's wrap up. Let's finish with the things that we didn't get to talk about in the podcast that you think are important. Let's start with Mr. Creighton Harrington. You've got something coming up that you'd like to promote, I know.
Oh, yes. Keep me on task. The Young Americans for Liberty, which is not affiliated with this podcast in any way, shape, form, or fashion. It is coming up this weekend, this next Saturday, a week from today, actually, March 23rd. It is still open to register for, so if you listen to this podcast and you can make it out to Indianapolis for an all-day thing, just drive down in the morning, drive back in the evening. It's only $25 if you're not a Young Americans for Liberty member. If you become a member before you sign up, it's only $10. So there is a benefit to become a dues-paying member, so take a look into that. But either way, it's going to be great. Matt Kibbe from Freedom Works is the keynote. Jack Hunter, a.k.a. the Southern Avenger, is going to be the AM keynote.
Chris Spangle.
There's
Are you speaking?
No, I just have a booth there.
There's going to be a lot of sponsors.
Vegas to hear you speak.
There's going to be a lot of sponsors, Advocates for Self-Government, the Institute for Humane Studies, Freedom Works, Leadership Institute, Intercollegiate Studies Institute. There's going to be a lot of them. So they're all going to be there, and then it's going to be great for networking, great for meeting other people in the liberty movement throughout the Midwest. And then there's going to be some trainings. There's going to be some panels, youth panel, and then a social afterwards where we can go and
do things that college students do. And if you're not listening to this podcast and you're not in the Indiana Midwest area, they're all across the country.
Yes, they are. If you go to Young Americans for Liberty's website and go to the state convention page, there's a bunch left. This is actually only the fourth one, and I think there's 10 total throughout the semester. So they're all over the place. There's one in California coming up, one in Colorado, one in Alabama. So they're all over the country. So if you can make it out to one of those, that's just as good.
All right, and come up and say hi if you're going to attend, and say hi. And also, if you're looking for an internship, let me know. Just laying that out there. Joe Ruiz, what caught your attention this week, or what is coming up in the future week that you'd like to mention, or what would you like to promote?
Well, I actually just want some feedback from our listeners, if we could. I want to know, after seeing those CPAC polls, because obviously CPAC is kind of a snapshot of kind of a niche demographic, conservatives and Republicans, and I want to know where Rand Paul at this point stands in the grand scheme of things. If the primary were held today, looking at those numbers, how true would the results be to the numbers that we saw at CPAC today? And so I guess I kind of want to hear from, hopefully some Republicans are listening or checking out the Facebook page or something, other than Greg Lenz and Creighton Romney.
No, he said he's a former.
What's that?
former Republican.
But
I voted Libertarian in this presidential election.
Okay, it was a bad joke, but I want some feedback. I want some feedback from people.
I'm sorry, Illuminatus. I don't have interests aligned with yours.
Oh, Lord.
Just kidding, brother.
You understand what I mean, right?
I do, 100%.
Okay.
Greg Lenz?
I think two things. I think watch on Monday. The hard left internet press is going to slam Rand Paul. One, because he just won and got validation not only from conservatives, but two, because he came out in support of a right to life. He's going to get hammered by it. And then also, keep in mind, even though CPAC wasn't as well organized as usual, none of these conferences are loosely organized. This was a big win for him, but it also shows the establishment isn't going down without a fight. It was 2%. It's right there neck and neck, and we'll see where things finish up.
All right, and mine is tell a friend. Hey, if you like the podcast, if you think it's good, just share We Are Libertarians on your wall or tweet us out, follow us on there, and let us know what you think. Who's that?
That's my daughter, Cammie. You guys said you wanted a girl on the show, so I told her to say hi.
Hi, Cammie.
He said hi.
Hi. Ask her what her political leanings are.
What are your political leanings?
My mommy.
Her mommy.
Okay. But what
mommy
do you
for president.
What do you think of Barack Obama?
What do you think of Barack Obama?
I don't know.
Sounds like
She's indifferent.
She's a typical voter.
Ignore your dad, and then after
He's
about
four.
30 minutes, look at him and go, "You just got Ruiz."
All right. Well, to Joe Ruiz, to Greg Lenz, Creighton Harrington, and all of you listening, thank you for joining us here on We Are Libertarians, and we'll see you next week. Music for We Are Libertarians is provided by Hoosier musician Brian Keith Wallen. Please check out his website, briankeithwallen.com. The song is Bad Spell. This podcast is produced by What is a Hoosier Productions.